Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Attorney Commander J.R. Glapohkpa Chesson talk show. This afternoon, I have a very special guest with me. He's the City Councilman of the City of Providence, Honorable Justin ROIAS. And he will be talking about his city today. We'll be learning something about the city, what he does, and some of his challenges. So bear with me for a few minutes as I go and bring the councilman in so we can talk about his city. Hello, Councilman RHODE. Welcome to my show.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm really happy that we can make this happen.
Well, I'm glad you accepted my invitation to come on the show. So please take a few minutes to tell us about yourself and why you decided to run for public office.
Sure. Well, my name is Justin ROIAS. I am, as you had pointed out to your audience, I am the Providence City Councilor representing Ward 4, also known as the North End neighborhood. I am, outside of my work as City Council, I am a school social worker, licensed clinical therapist. And so much of my professional experience has been in the mental health world. I've always been passionate about public policy, specifically when it comes to macro social work. And so I always felt like government needed more mental health professionals to influence and inform policy. It's one of the reasons why I stepped into the political arena. I am in my work, it's very on the ground in the trenches. And first and foremost, my top priority is make sure that the folks I represent have the highest quality of life.
Wow. So, what are constituency concerns you have experienced during this is your first term?
Yes.
So it's challenging.
Yes, it is. It certainly comes with its challenges. I'll start with, typical constituent concerns that you often find on the ground. That is not necessarily abnormal to the city council experience, but folks just want the basics, right? They're not asking for luxury city services, right? So they're asking, why can't the city make sure that my trash is collected on time and on the day it's supposed to be collected? And we've had real challenges with Waste Management, who is our private contractor. And one of the reasons for that issue is we've privatized trash collection. And in my view, when you privatize away city services, those city services become private enterprise, and it's a lot more difficult to hold private enterprise accountable. Other constituent complaints has been, the rough shape of our sidewalks. Folks who might be in wheelchairs can't access our sidewalks, and they have to ride into the street. We also have developers who are buying properties across the North End, and their business model has been to rent to typically college students. And what that is doing is we're seeing this sort of monopolization of the housing stock, and it's driving up prices in our neighborhood. And so there's just so much. I will say, being a city councilor, it's very entertaining. Not, every day is not the same day, and every day brings up very unique and challenging circumstances that as a government we have to navigate so that people are taken care of. On a personal level, the challenges I face as councilor is being a young father, making sure that I'm balancing this role, as a school social worker, and I'm being, balancing as well as being a father, husband, and elected official, and making sure that I can equally distribute my time to every bucket. And that's very, very challenging. I have every intent to run for re-election, and I'll be honest with you, it is very challenging when sometimes I can't be there can't be present for my daughter's milestones. And that is something I had to really reflect on recently. And what, whenever you have, working folks like myself, it is really difficult to be an elected official and to be an elected office. And that's not new. But I think our country doesn't allow working people to be elected into office. That's one of the reasons why people feel, very personally, that our government doesn't speak to them, doesn't meet their needs, that their priorities for the donor class, not the ordinary resident of the city.
So do council people get paid?
We get paid. I would characterize that as a stipend. So it is the amount of work a city councilor has to do. It is 24/7. In fact, I would advocate in the future that the city councilors have a full-time job, that being a city councilor is a full-time job. And here's why. If we want stronger representation in the city, if we want councilors to respond to our concerns on the same day, you have to make it a full-time job. I try to answer and address concerns on my lunch break as a full-time school social worker. Much of my constituent request that I have to address comes after work hours. And if I could just give you kind of a glimpse into what a typical day for a working class city council looks like, is I go to work at 8 a.m. I get out at 3. I go right to City Hall to prepare for my committee assignment. I'm on several committees. And then sometimes we don't leave City Hall until 8 p.m. And then I shoot right back home, put my daughter to bed, and then we start the process. And so there's not so much time to really call neighbors back and make sure that they're being heard and seen. Most of my constituent concerns are when I leave work and I'm driving to City Hall, I'm calling residents back, and I'm trying to, and it's a really difficult mountain to climb because the work builds up, and you never seem to get ahead of it.
But were you telling me, Councilman, you don't have enough time to do nothing?
That's correct.
You don't have time because when you leave work and go to City Hall at 8 o'clock, when you going to come visit me or the neighborhood?
Well, that is correct. So the other thing is, a lot of my time on Saturdays is to kind of close the loop on that, to make visits with neighbors, accept their meetings. And so really I've dedicated, in terms of my schedule, and this is sort of on a personal note, is I have dedicated my Sundays to family. That's it. So from Monday to Saturday, I'm dedicating my time and energy to my professional career, serving my students and serving my constituents. But on Sunday, that is sacred family time. And you have to do that. You have to do that if you want to be a present father and partner. And so I've committed to that. And so far it's working, but it has its days. It's really tough on the family.
So, Councilman, what were some of your platform issues?
My platform issues, did you say?
Yeah.
When I ran for office, so this is sort of my general view of. I'm always cynical of government, and I still am. I'm in the belly of the beast, and I'm more cynical of government than ever. What I would say is I ran for two things. Number one, to make sure that the North End is no longer overlooked. I've felt for a very long time, when you look to other neighborhoods in Providence, there's certain assets they have that we don't. I could get into that. The one, a basic thing, but it's not basic though. But one thing, for example, is the North End does not have a splash pad in our parks, just like other neighborhoods in Providence have. Now, that might seem really superficial, but we've had many weeks this summer with extreme heat, and there has been nowhere our kids in our neighborhood can go to feel cool.
Get stressed.
Yeah, to get cooled down. That's a public health issue. So I'm happy to announce we've secured our funding for a splash pad in our neighborhood. It's a matter of when, and it's a matter of when those shovels begin to start, digging in the ground to get that process ready. But we have the funding, and I'm really excited to, my goal is before my tenure ends that we bring a splash pad to our neighborhood for our kids.
So what we're looking at putting it?
That's a great question. Certainly don't want to overpromise, but I want to share the love among the parks in our neighborhood. Preet McCaff Park appears to be the park that everyone goes to, in part because we have the newest infrastructure there. So, it's a question of, equitable distribution. Do I want to put that splash pad where, in the park where everyone goes to? Or do I want to put that in another park and kind of build that park up so that it's just equally as amazing as the park we have across the way from that funeral home, which is Preet McCaff Park. So we're still figuring that one out, is identify which park should have this splash pad. And I'll say, in the context of why I ran, so we have, neighborhood issues that I wanted to to kind of confront and to really solve, but sort of in that context of a neighborhood that has been neglected, we don't have a neighborhood association. I think we might be the only neighborhood in province that doesn't have one, and so we're actually starting one right now. And so I'm hoping that after my term ends, we could have this highly functioning neighborhood association that in fact can serve as an independent body to hold the city councilor accountable to meet the needs of the neighborhood. That's not just me. It's whoever who comes after me. And so having that independent body to exist, we haven't had one. And I think it has been a real blemish on our neighborhood. So there are some amazing things happening, some low-hanging fruit that I want to kind of hone in on and make sure that we just bringing the neighborhood together. The neighborhood platform that I think boils down to, which I ran on, was let's have a North End that is safe, connected, and clean. If we could achieve those three pillars, I think we're going to have a thriving neighborhood and a neighborhood that we could really be proud of. On the city side, what I could boil my sort of beef down to is, for the longest time, elected officials in the city have tried to turn province into a playground for outsiders and has neglected the people that have lived here for a long time. You often hear in commercials, we're going to turn province into a world-class city. Well, what that signals to the average folk is that we're gonna give tax breaks to luxury developers, luxury condos that people can't afford to live in. It signals to the everyday resident that what makes province great, according to the outside, which is, I could run the list down. The PPAC, we have Brown University, we have our luxury restaurants on Fed Hill. All of these have made Providence well known and has elevated our reputation. But I would argue the average resident in the city is locked out of those assets. We don't have the disposable income to actually enjoy what makes our city great, right? And so we just have not put enough focus on the average resident. And so I wanted, when I ran, I wanted to make sure that was a highlight. And when I'm in office, I want to make sure we pass policies to make sure that this is an affordable place to live. And, for as long as we keep making this city about people from the outside, then we lose focus on that.
One of the problems Rhode Island is facing is homelessness for homeless people.
Yep.
What's your challenge?
Yeah, we have, in the North End, it's very visible. We have many encampments in this neighborhood, in part because we have significant tree canopy here, where folks are, the folks who are unhoused don't want to be seen. They kind of want to.
I mean, like near Wendy there.
That's correct.
I mean, who ever thought people were living in there?
Yeah, there's and there's other locations too that are on the margins of our neighborhood, essentially. So I think there's a lot of reasons why people become homeless. And I spent a lot of time with these folks at the encampments in the North End. And yes, there is a view out there that folks become homeless because of substance abuse, because of mental health, and that is surely front and center. But then there's also the stories where, someone loses a loved one. I had a gentleman say, the moment I lost my wife, I could not continue on. And he spiraled out of control. And, it's really sad to hear those stories. And part of that, a consequence of that, is losing your home. And so his life became unstable, and he's been living outside in some of the most terrible conditions, and it's truly heartbreaking. I think some of the challenges with the issue of homelessness is shelter capacity. In the state of Rhode Island, shelter is at capacity. Rarely will you find beds to be available, and I think that is that is a blemish on our government. We also have shelter that, let's face it, they have too many barriers. And what I mean by that is, if the goal is to put a roof over someone's head, in my view, the immediate goal cannot be sobriety. It cannot, we have, if the expectation of some of these shelters is, in order to be here, you need to not, be on drugs. You're not going to get them there. You're not. And so first and foremost is they got to step their foot into the shelter. Second issue that I've heard from this community is the curfews. We have shelters in Providence that kick folks out at 6 a.m., 7 a.m., and then tell them to be back at 5 p.m. Look, that is really difficult for people to kind of experience daily. Is you want these folks out early in the morning, and they can't be there throughout the day. It's lunacy in my view. And so we're creating an environment in these shelters where, in fact, people would actually prefer to live in a tent. So if we want people off the streets, if we want less encampments, we need to meet folks really where they're at. And I know that's kind of a cliche saying in the nonprofit world, but we really have to meet folks where they're at. Otherwise, the status quo will prevail. To combat that, and that's the other thing. Before I stepped foot in office, we really never had someone to really address this issue head on. What the policy we had. And it's still the city policy to some extent. Well, in my view, in a lot of extent, is we just kept moving folks around the neighborhood. Like we were playing whack-a-mole. We saw an encampment, we moved the encampment. And we moved them to a location. We hid them for 6 months until the neighbors complained. Then we vacated them, and they moved some down the street. And so they just keep moving to these different locations, and we're never solving the issue. We're just hiding it. We're hiding homelessness. Hiding homelessness has been our public policy of the city. Now, shortly after I got elected, the housing department came to me and said, hey, we have this state-owned land in the neighborhood that we want to essentially turn into a tiny home village as an emergency shelter. And I was like, let's do it. If this is going to reduce encampments in our neighborhood, why not? How could I say no to that? It's not a solution. It's not a complete solution, but it's certainly better than living in tents.
It's not going to fix at least.
Yes. And so it's called Echo Village. I hate to describe the location as this, but for Rhode Islanders, unfortunately, they get it when I describe the location this way. But right now, Echo Village is located behind Foxy Lady. I think
I saw some development going down there, right?
Yeah, it's almost completed. It's been a long time.
Yeah, I saw it on the highway.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, looking at it, I said, wow, the building of this place.
That's right. It is off the highway. Yeah. It's as away from residential as possible. I don't see that being successful if it was close to residential. Unfortunately, people grow, fatigue whenever they're living near encampments. Understandably so. Yeah. We cannot, ignore that there is real issues whenever encampments are set up. Right? You do have. People often complain about needles being everywhere, and I am not going to deny that reality. But we truly have to make sure that we're creating these environments and these shelters that actually make it so that folks want to be there. And so step one is putting a roof over their head. And step two is intense case management, building relationships with these folks, strengthening rapport building. The only way we're going to get these folks the treatment they deserve is by building that relationship with them, having them trust us. And for whatever reason, they have built a distrust with providers, with the government, with public safety officials. And so we can't do that if we keep sending out vacate orders and they have to grab their belongings and relocate. There's a lot of trauma in doing that.
So what kind of numbers are we looking at?
For homelessness in our neighborhood or in
both in Rhode Island, in our neighborhood?
I wish I had the numbers on me. I don't want to. I think for folks who are chronically I've heard this several months ago, so it might even be higher. But folks who are actively living outside, who are chronically absent in the state of Rhode Island, is about 500 to 600 people each day. Now, in my view, I don't want a single person living outside, but there is a silver lining in that. And that silver lining is this issue is solvable. We can solve this issue. We are not Skid Row. We are not Los Angeles. If only 600 people daily are living on the streets, why can't we create infrastructure in place to get these folks off the street? Now, will everyone accept help? No. But that is a misconception. When I visit these encampments, almost everyone wants shelter. No one wants to live outside. That is not I don't believe that to be a human condition. We all need to be away from the elements of outside. It's just, I will not settle for any human living outside. I don't believe in it. It hurts my soul to think that people are living outside. And so I believe that's an accurate statistic, but don't quote me on it. I don't have the numbers in front of me. Here in the North End, our largest encampments have been 50 people. That's a lot of people in one encampment.
Recently, I was watching a show, COUNCILMAN, and there was this man and his daughter. They were living out in the park, camping out in the park, eating their own food, hunting their food from the little rabbits and things in the park. And when the police went and found them and got them out, put him in the hospital, gave him a house and everything, this guy left everything and went back to the park. He and his daughter, she didn't want to live in no civilized. She was in her teenage. She left her adopted people too and went in the forest after her father died and went back in the park. So do you really feel that there are people who just want to do that?
I think that's my feeling is I think that's a rare, those are rare cases. Truly. When I went to the largest encampment in the North End, and I won't disclose the location out of the for the safety of those folks, but I had asked them, once Echo Village opens up, are you willing to relocate there? And all of them said yes with confidence. One of the reasons why they said yes is because Echo Village is what we would describe to be a low barrier shelter. There's no curfew. You can lock up your belongings. That's another reason folks are hesitant to go to shelters. They can't lock up their belongings. Their belongings get stolen. Yeah. Now we're talking about Social Security cards, licenses, IDs. These are documents that need, and if you lose them, think about the process that involves someone who's homeless. Think about what that day-to-day looks like to get those documents back. It's not as easy as hopping in a car and driving to an appointment to get those documents. I mean, and so I do believe there are cases where people would prefer to live outside, but I think those are very rare, and often the media, I think,
Exaggerates.
what's that?
The media exaggerates.
Yeah, I think it's sensationalism, and unfortunately, I think it creates a narrative, and it creates these preconceived notions that folks latch onto to kind of judge folks who are living outside. But look, I don't deny the realities. There's a lot of folks who are homeless that are addicted to substances and who have mental health disorders. A lot of those are what we call um, comorbidity disorders, where it begs the question: does is it the chicken before the egg, or is it the egg before the chicken? Do folks, through their trauma, wind up with a mental health disorder that is so devastating and impairs their life, and as a consequence, do they need to self-medicate to kind of deal with the symptoms of that disorder, or and substance abuse disorder is a mental illness, but do folks wind up abusing substances, and then also, by as a way of a consequence to that, also become mentally ill with several disorders? So that's a reality of several folks in this community, and it's a reality that I wouldn't want to live each day. So
Well, we hope that we can get some solution to this problem. So how has your platform issues overlap with the constituency issues? You listed some of them, trash and all of that.
yeah, well, when I ran again, I tried to run on a neighborhood centric platform, and so trash collection's one, but generally speaking, what you heard a lot is folks want a clean neighborhood. So I've been in office for almost 2 years now, and each year since being elected, we've had summer to fall neighborhood cleanups. And so in fact, for your viewing audience, I would encourage them to follow me on social media at Justin ROIAS, Ward 4, Facebook. You could find me. And for residents who might be watching, I would encourage them to follow me to follow the latest neighborhood updates. But we've had neighborhood cleanups this summer, and it's going all the way to the fall. So our last one is in October, and before the winter months come rolling in. And so folks voiced they want a clean neighborhood, and unfortunately, we can't rely on government for a clean neighborhood. Government can only do so much for us. So as a neighborhood, we really need to band together if we want those basic things: a clean, safe, and connected neighborhood. And we've been doing that. Again, one of the pillars is a connected neighborhood. I wanted more family engagement events in this neighborhood, and we've been having them. We've been hosting them, a lot of them at Da Vinci Center. Just two Thursdays ago, we had music at the park, at the Hopkins Square Park. And
do you send out flyers notifying people of these things?
I'm sorry?
Do you send out flyers notifying people?
Yes, that particular event in partnership with the North End Business Association, we do go around giving flyers to our local library, to small businesses. One of the challenges is the cost of mailers. It really, a lot of the folks are, telling me, why don't you send me mail? Well, I tell you what, sending mail is very expensive. And I'll share this with your audience. I am not a typical elected official, meaning I do not accept political contributions from developers, from corporate PACs. I don't accept contributions from unions. I only want to be beholden to neighbors. And so what that means is I don't have a lot of money to purchase mailers and to send out mass mail throughout the neighborhood. So it's a double-edged sword. I don't want my votes to be influenced by special interest. I have to be rooted in what my neighborhood cares about, not what a wealthy developer downtown cares about.
That's very true. Well, I wish you the best, Mr. Councilman.
Thank you so much.
Your hands are full.
My hands are very full, and sometimes I wish I could replicate me. Actually, it's funny. I do have an identical twin, but I wish there was one more Justin ROIAS so that things could I could juggle responsibilities a bit more efficiently. But yeah, you are so right. My plate is full, and I think a lot of counselors feel that way. Again, we have several counselors who are working, who have full-time jobs, and this is technically a part-time job on paper, but in practice, it's a full-time job. And so, I know your residents often voice concerns about government being unresponsive. And one of the ways we could change that course is through a full-time legislator. And we're not the only part-time legislator. State officials at the General Assembly, that's a part-time legislator. We are very unique in this state where other states have a full-time legislator, a full-time city council. Boston, for example, they have a full-time city council. Now, you might say, well, they're a bigger city than us. But you know what? Our city is a medium-sized city, and there's a lot of issues that we have to tackle that we don't get a chance to tackle until like 8 p.m., 9 p.m. at night. And that is just not an efficient time to do that.
See, we understand the situation now. So in closing, what message do you have for the ward and people in Providence?
Yeah. We have a lot of things cooking in the North End, but we have to do away with our apathy. If we want a thriving neighborhood, it's not going to happen overnight, and it's certainly not going to happen alone. We have to come together. You have to get tapped into meetings, get involved, follow me on social media, Google my name, and you will eventually come across links where you can learn about the neighborhood. But I hear a lot of folks, they want this, they want that. The first step is showing up. I can't do it alone, and I don't want to do it alone. I want to make sure that we are, walking shoulder to shoulder in this fight to take back our neighborhood and to make it the best place it can be. So that's my message: is to get folks activated. Join me, join us. We have a lot of things happening in our neighborhood.
Thank you, Councilman. Thank you for this.
Thank you so much for allowing me to be on
I'm
your show.
definitely sure that my viewers will learn a lot from what we just discussed, because, I mean, that's a lot of issues for people, There's
Correct.
a lot of issues, and like you said, many issues, no time.
That's right.
So I want to thank you again for this interview.
Thank
And
you.
whenever you have any message to send out, send it to me. Let me put it on my Facebook page too. I've got thousands of people on my page.
Will do.
Yes, and I'm sure they will check it out. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you again, man.
You have a great day, and thank you to your audience for viewing today's interview.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Have a good day.
You too.